This time on Geni's Way, I talk with Vangelis Guenther, who is an entrepreneur, business and technical consultant, and life coach. In our conversation, we discuss the process of uncovering and removing beliefs that are not aligned with one's true self. Vangelis emphasizes the importance of becoming honest with oneself and seeking the help of a mentor or coach to accelerate personal growth. Vangelis also shares his daily routine, which includes clearing energy, activating chakras, and reciting soul mantras. Ready? Then let's get to it. Hi, I want to welcome Vangelis Guenther to Geni's Way. I'm so happy to see you, Vangelis. Can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm going to start at the beginning. I was born at a very young age. I was born in Greece, and I was adopted by a German family when I was 2 years old. And I lived in San Antonio, Texas for many years. And then I moved to California, and then now I currently live in Costa Rica. And while I was growing up in Texas, I had this desire to play music. My first grade music teacher told my mother, your child has a lot of rhythm, and it'd be a good idea if you gave him piano lessons. So I did that. Took 10 years of classical music, and I started playing in clubs when I was 17. And that is what I really wanted to do with my life. However, I was also brought up in a family where you listen to your elders, you listen to your teachers, you listen to your pastors, all your, authority figures. And music in their eyes wasn't a career. So I ended up working in the world of technology. And I did that for about 45 years. Started at IBM in 79, and then I started as a consultant with Cisco in 95 and traveled the world helping customers install and deploy and all of the networking stuff. And through those years, I met a lot of people. And as a result of all of that, I decided to start a coaching business because I realized a lot of those people, even though they were very successful in the eyes of the world, a lot of them felt empty, just like I did. So that's kind of a short history of me.
Wow, what an interesting story. I was trained as a classically trained musician as well. My mother was a classically trained musician. So
What'd you play?
Piano.
Oh, piano as well. Okay.
I kind of follow what you were saying, like playing music, a student, follow a certain way of doing a certain thing so you can have a certain career. I can just totally relate to that. So why do you think your career felt empty to you?
That's a good question, Geni, because one of the things I realized was as a child growing up, things happen, and I'm just going to say events. Events happen that we hear the word trauma. And in my definition of trauma, it's any event that causes you to create a coping mechanism, create a persona, create an act where you can survive, where you can function in society because it affected you so much. And for whatever reason, you are not able to express yourself at that time. Because when you're 5 years old, you can't say, I'm leaving home, I'm going to get a job and get an apartment, goodbye. You don't have that. And also, when you're that young, physiologically, you're not even fully developed to even have that type of analytical ideas. You don't realize I can push back because you're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. So your only way of surviving and functioning is to begin to create another way of being. So when you do that, let's say this is you and you're born, and so now you start creating this other persona that's on top of it. And you live this way for so long, you don't ever see this. All you see is this. And to the point that act, that persona, you start improving it. What I did, I wanted to play music. I was not allowed to do that. They said, no, you can't. And again, I didn't push back because that was determined to be rebellious. And so I was very faithful to everyone except me. And so I lived not my life, I lived someone else's life. And when you start doing that for so long, you begin to be so separated from who you really are that you don't even have the awareness of what you are anymore. You think you're this persona. And so now you go through life. I was really good at what I did. And people said, you must love what you do. Well, not really, but you're so good. I just do everything well, but that's not really what I want to do. I want to play music. And so again, you're not living your life. And the more you get away from you, the emptier you feel, the more unfulfilled you feel, because you're helping everyone else build their dreams. You're not building yours. In fact, you start realizing, I don't even have any dreams anymore because your dreams were told those aren't dreams. So that's kind of how I got into feeling empty, unfulfilled, and also trapped. Trapped because we're conditioned about the definition of success. Make all A's, be number one, make a lot of money. I was living in a $1.3 million house on a hill in California, complete ocean view, making over $250,000 a year. And do you think I can tell my neighbors, I'm really sad? What do you mean? You should be grateful. You should be appreciative of what you have. Well, there you go. So now I feel trapped because I can't even share my emptiness with anybody. There was no one there to talk to. And of course, even if they felt empty, they're looking around, well, no, I'm happy. Well, you should tell your face that. I mean, because they're acting too, right? It's all an act. Oh, yeah, we're doing great. Yeah. And then behind closed doors, they're like, oh, man.
I'm miserable, huh?
Exactly. And they don't feel comfortable sharing because, the people they're around would say, how can you say that, And it just like a domino, it just goes on and on and on and on.
So for people who listen, they need to realize they're not the only one that feel that way. You're a prime example.
Exactly.
At what point should they stop what they're doing and do something about it?
That's also really, that question has a lot of facets to it, because I grew up in an extremely religious environment, and it was an environment where everything was dictated to you. We actually, this isn't a movie. We had a bonfire at our church, and they said, bring all your music and all that devil stuff, You mean all the music I played for all those years? Yeah, that's all terrible. So we burned all my music, all of my albums, all of my stuff, Because that was all. See what I'm saying? The stuff that I wanted to do, that was the devil, right? So you start realizing, well, how can what I want to do be so bad? Well, it didn't follow their rules. And so my life was dictated. And it was also to the point where no matter what you did, if you questioned things again, it was back to the rebellious stuff. So how you get out of that is you have to get to the end of your rope. See, I was taught to always help everybody. So I was what they call an out-of-control healer. I helped people that didn't ask for help, but that was how I was taught. Don't ever think about yourself. That's selfish. Only think of others. It is better to give than receive. All these things we hear all the time. And so I never made it on the list of helping. It was always helping everyone else. So when I finally got to the point where I said, I hate my life. Now, hate is not a strong enough word, but that's the only word I can think of. But I hated my life because it was like, if I have all of this skill and all of this ability, and I feel this empty, something is not working. And so I had to get to that point. And what I noticed is in my coaching business, when people You say, yeah, I'm doing fine. I go, okay, well, when you're not doing fine, call me. Now, in the past, I would have said, well, let me see if I can help you. Now, no. If you don't call me ever, we're not going to talk. Because I realized, I'll give you an example of it, okay, just so you understand. I had a friend who her father was an amazing pencil sketch artist. I mean, phenomenal. But he was painting houses instead. And one day we go into his office and I said, you know, we could take some of his sketches, make a portfolio, and shop it around. And we did that. And at that, now again, this is like 40 years ago. At that time, you know, I had all these Hallmark stores. And we had 4 or 5 Hallmark stores that said, oh my gosh, we could make copies and sell this. Absolutely. So on his birthday, we said, we have a confession. We went into your office and we took some of your sketches and we shopped them around and we got 5 places. Oh, that's great. That's great. So 9 months later, I said, hey, has your dad done anything with those things? And has he gone to those shops? No. So he just complains that he was dealt a bad deck of cards, that he doesn't get any luck, he doesn't get any breaks. We do all this work, and I realized he didn't ask for help. I got caught again.
Wow.
Helping someone that didn't ask for help. That's why, if you want me to work with you, you have to be to the point where you don't have anything else to do. You're done. And that's where I had to get to, Geni. Where I was done. It was like the end of my rope. There's no more rope left. I remember exactly where I was. I was in the Crown Plaza Hotel, Chicago O'Hare, room 1424 in 2009, September. Not that I remember it, but okay. So, yeah, I mean, it's like I was there yesterday. Wow. I remember sitting in that room just thinking, I'm done. I mean, if this is it, I'm done. Now, I wasn't thinking about killing myself because I was already dead. Can't kill someone who's dead.
Well, they call it walking
zombie.
Dead.
Yeah. Well, if you're not living your life, Geni, what are you? If you're not living your life and you're living the life other people want you to live, you're a walking dead.
Yeah.
Right? And so I was already dead. And who had to die to go to hell? I was already in hell. So I thought, well, I'm done. And that's when I made some really hard decisions. I said, okay, I cannot continue the life I'm living because all that will do is give me the same results. So 15 years ago, when I was in that hotel, I decided I'm leaving everything. And all these people that were my so-called friends for 30, 35, 40 years, I realized that the only reason they were around me was because I did things for them.
Isn't that
a
something?
lot of people. Yeah, because no one called me.
Wow.
You know, and it was not until like years later that a few people kind of reached out to me, but it was like crickets when I left.
You're not fitting their box. You're no longer their friend.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, and you also you realize that everyone is living their life through their own filter, their own fears, their own coping mechanisms. So the reason they didn't reach out was because they were living in their own filter and belief patterns, just like I was. I mean, I lived my life through this mask, through this other person. Other people lived the life through the person they created to survive in life. So if you think about it, here you have the real person right here. Here is their mask. And here you have the real person here. Here is their mask. So when this person speaks, it has to go through that fear, that trauma, that belief pattern, that coping mechanism. And if this person was told all their life they're stupid, they're never going to make it, and this person says, you're amazing, well, it's not going to get through that block because they don't hear what you're really saying. Mm. So that's probably why they didn't reach out.
What do you think the root cause of people's fear?
Well, when you're young, and the reason I say young is because there's several books. One of them is The Body Keeps the Score. It's by Dr. Vangelis. And they had realized after years of study that at the beginning they thought trauma is trauma. But then they realized there was a difference between someone who had trauma after they were 18 or 19 years old, as opposed to having trauma when you're 4, 5, 6, and 7. Because physiologically, there are some things that aren't developed in your being, in your body. And so they thought, well, that's interesting, because they were trying to use the same methods for people that, say, went into some, war zone and had trauma versus, a 4 or 5-year-old that was abused when they had trauma.
Wow.
Right? And they realized they're not responding the same. Why? Well, this young person doesn't have things developed that this person did. So they can't even do some things that this older person does. So what causes that is that when you are traumatized, when you have an event that causes you to create some coping mechanism, some other mask, then that's where that comes from. And again, some people cope by purposely forgetting things. Because the memory of what happened to them, they can't be remembering that all the time because they can't survive, they can't function. Some people, they're on an alert 100% of the time. I was working with one individual. I said, how was your day? He said, I was stressed all day. I said, what happened? He goes, nothing. I said, oh, I know what happened to you. What? When you were young, how was your life when you were young? Were you always having to be on alert? Oh yeah, because I always got, beat up and abused. I never knew what day it was. Some days it'd be Monday and Tuesday. The next week it'd be Tuesday and Thursday. So I said, yeah, you never got to relax. You never got to relax. Do you hear some noise?
We're good.
Yeah. Okay. So you never got to relax. So think about it. If you never know when something's going to happen, you have to be on alert 100% of the time. So let's say you leave now your home, your environment, you still have that coping mechanism. It's almost like 12 o'clock and all is well. 15 minutes later, all is well, because you don't know when that abuse is going to happen. And so you are so accustomed to being on alert 100% of the time, you don't rest. So that's what happened with this individual.
Wow.
I said, you were probably always on alert. He goes, yeah. Well, you're still on alert. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So you don't even need to be triggered. That's the thing I learned. So a lot of people say, oh, you have to be triggered. No, you don't.
That's actually
what
I was going to ask. It doesn't even necessary to be triggered, huh?
Exactly.
Wow.
So I've learned through all these years, just working with people and reading a lot of books, and just from my own experiences, realizing, and so I add that to my list. Okay, don't even need to be triggered. No, you don't. And then there's also one of the groups of people that I also want to reach out to are those of you that live with trauma persons. I'll give you an example that was in one of these books. The lady was at the psychiatrist's office. She spilled some water and he said, I'll clean that up. And she exploded. And he says, after he quieted her down, he said, tell me what happened. Well, she said that when she was 5 years old, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, her dad would come in and sexually abuse her. And when it was all done, they would say, I'll clean that up.
Wow.
Now think about this. Think about the scenario. You're in the house with people and someone spills something. Oh, I'll clean that up. And they go ballistic. What did I say? Well, you said I'll clean that up. How dare you say I'll clean that up? Well, that was innocuous. That's like nothing. Exactly. So a lot of times I realized, I was thinking, what did I do? Nothing. You did something that was, I picked up a glass of water like the dad did, or I pick this up like the mom did or like the uncle. You shut the door like the uncle did. You turned off. You did something that brought that memory back. And so when you're living with someone who has had trauma, it's difficult too. Because you may not even have any drama, but because you're living with someone who's so traumatized, your life is disruptive all the time because you don't know what you did. That was something I learned about 5-6 years ago because I had read that book at that time and I thought, wow, that was a big realization, huge realization. So you don't have to be triggered. And when you're living with someone who's traumatized, now also think about this. When I was at IBM, there were a couple of people in the office, they would say, okay, stay away from that person. Well, I'm 21 years old. I have no idea why. Well, now I know. Because they were triggered. Something happened and they're, whatever. Or they're the one that doesn't need to even be triggered. Yeah. I mean, I sat in front of a lady that she was one of those that didn't need any triggering. I mean, you just had to always, go constantly. Yeah. So people bring that to the office. They say, don't bring your work home.
Yeah.
Well, I say, don't bring your home to work. You're bringing your trauma to work. You're bringing a trauma in the car. You're bringing a trauma to the grocery store. You're bringing your trauma to the gym. You're bringing your trauma to the salon. You know what I mean? It's
always with them.
And yeah. And see, when you are aware that everyone is living through their trauma, it gives you such compassion for people.
Correct.
Because now you realize, oh, don't worry, this is what I mean to you. Oh, that's just their coping mechanism. Well, what do you mean? They don't know what they're doing. Well, they shouldn't act like that. Well, okay, what do you want to do? Tell them stop acting like that? That's the other thing that gets me too. I would go to these seminars and they'd say, okay, stop procrastinating. Okay, how? Well, think different thoughts. How? Well, you've got to just release that. How? Just let it go. How? This is what always bugged me. Mm-hmm. People telling you what to do, but not giving you any how to do it.
Speaking of how, what would be a couple of simple things that people can start doing to take some of those masks or layers, however you want to call it?
Part of it is to be honest with yourself. Don't worry about being honest with other people, because if you can't be honest with you, you're not going to be honest with other people. So stop that. Work on you. Okay, so be honest. Now, to be honest is one of the most difficult things. That's why I strenuously, like to be more in the movie A Few Good Men, I strenuously, strongly suggest that you get someone to work with you. And here's why. You can see my blind spots and I can see yours.
Right.
You know why? Right. I don't have your ego. You don't have my ego. So since you don't have my ego, you can see my blind spots. And since I don't have your ego, I can see yours. So part of being honest is to work with someone that understands how to go into your mind. And your mind, by the way, is your entire body. It's not just your head. Every cell. And so one of the ways to do that is to work with somebody, because I was in a seminar back in 2014, 10 years ago. And when I grew up, there were all these tools that we learned to improve your life, right? The first thing I learned, because I was in church, was prayer. Okay? Then there was the positive thinking movement. And then there was the, then there was the visualization, and then the vision boards, and then the binaural, and then there was the 3x5 cards, and all these things. And they said, you have to do these things and your life will change. I did all of those things, not for years, not for months, but decades. Not much happened. And so here I'm in this seminar, And the guy starts talking about, you've got belief patterns that are blocking you. I didn't quite understand it at the time. And then I met this person. And I went over to their house, and he opens up the garage, and he has this 1964 number 5 Mustang. I said, you don't even like American cars. No. Well, what do you have an American car for? There was a guy down the street trying to sell it. No one bought it. And he said, you want it? And I said, okay. Wait. Let me make sure I understand this. You didn't pray for it? No. You weren't even positive. No, I don't like them. It wasn't on your vision board. Nope. You didn't visualize it. No way, I don't like those. You didn't do anything. No. And you got it? Mm-hmm. Geni, all the stuff I learned, I realized it's all false.
Oh, wow.
Because if any of it was true, the guy wouldn't have gotten the car. If you have to be positive, if you have to pray, if you have to be visualization, he didn't do a thing, and he got it. That just
blow your mind.
That was like one of those. It did. That was one of those days where a huge shift. It was like bling. It's like, well, crap. Now it made sense to me what I learned in 2014. What's the difference between me and that guy? He didn't have any blocks. Didn't have any belief patterns that sabotaged him from getting things. And then now it made sense. And I said, oh, okay. So that's why none of my prayer and visualizations and vision boards and positive doesn't work, because I got some catch-22 or some thought that says, no, it's not going to work. Well, that's when I started. So I had a partner. I got a partner. She at the time, she lives in New York. And for 7 years, we would speak with each other every week, sometimes 2 times a week, because we would say, okay, what triggered you this week? And we had 3 or 4 tools that we worked with, mental tools. And when I started, I would say I was probably triggered every 5 minutes in my life, because there's so many things bothered me, but I had learned to be calm, peaceful. I was a really good actor. Very good actor. Because people said, God, I wish I was peaceful like you. I'm thinking, yes. But inside I was a raging storm. Absolute raging storm. But I spent all of my energy to keep it down. So we worked with each other for 7 years, and I started working and working. Now I get triggered maybe once a month. Not every 5 minutes like I did before, but once a month maybe. And it's also because when I started working on myself, they said, okay, how do you feel? I go, I don't feel anything. I had to shut my feelings down. It started when I was 9 years old. My dog died, and my mom said, quit crying. Okay. In other words, don't express yourself. So I stopped feeling. I ignored my feelings. And so part of working on this is you have to feel. You feel anything? No. So it took me a while to bring those walls down. You know, when people say, I have a high pain threshold, oh my gosh, you don't feel much. How do you know? Because I did that too. I know exactly what you're talking about. Well, I'm pretty calm. Oh, you are rage inside. How do you know? Because that was me too. Well, not necessarily. Okay, fine. I noticed you got really pissed off the other day when someone said that. Well, yeah, I know. I was through that. See, I can sense so many of these things because I did it. I hid all that stuff. You see, and that's what helps you to help people, is because when you've been through all this stuff, it's easy. Well, for me, it's easy to identify when people are, pushing things down and living something else. So that's why when I say are you living you, or are you living someone else? So that's really, is that making more sense? How you can, now what that means, that you're not living you, you're living someone else's life.
Yeah, because you stop being able to feel, you're starting to feel empty and things like that.
And then when you start tearing down the walls and all of that high pain threshold that you think is so wonderful, now you start feeling a lot of stuff.
And then you start feeling miserable and saying, what is going on now, right?
But that's good, because now you're like, how do you feel? Miserable. Great. Now let's work on that. Because see, you weren't feeling miserable. You kind of, you didn't even know what you were feeling. You see? But now I feel angry. Great. Now let's work on that. Oh, I feel sad. Great. Let's work on that. You see what I mean? So you once you start feeling, you start realizing, my gosh, I'm so emotional. Great. Now we can work on stuff.
We're humans. We're supposed to be emotional. We're supposed to feel.
Yeah. See, yeah. I mean, when I was going through church, they have songs that say, love's not a feeling. Well, okay, so you don't feel love? No, love's not a feeling. That's
really?
A song.
What is it?
And then there's so many songs that talk about not feeling things, are you living in an old man's rubble? All these songs talk about, every time you feel it's a wrong thing, and it's like, well, now I'm reversing everything I learned, because that's why I shut everything out. Now I'm undoing all that. And really, I'm not getting better or progressing. All I'm doing is what Michelangelo did. I just removed everything that was not David. So all I'm doing is removing everything that is not me. It's a different perspective.
It sure is. Can you give us some simple tools, like maybe one, to start dealing with that kind of stuff?
Well, the getting honest is a tool, and getting a partner is a tool. Because when you're trying to, have you ever read a book and then you read it 3 years later and you say, my gosh, this was here before? No, they added those pages since you read it last. Okay. That's because we were talking earlier before we started recording, right? That you have all the answers. Okay.
Yeah, what does that mean to you? You have all the answers.
Everyone can figure everything out. But think about it. You read a book, 3 years later, you see a little bit more. 3 years later, you see a little bit more. 3 years later, you see a little bit more. Now it's 20 years later and you see a little bit more. I don't want to take 20 years. I'd like someone to help me. Maybe instead of 20 years, we can collapse it to 3. See, so yes, we have all the answers. But you see, to me, when I was teaching my IBM and my Cisco classes, I would tell my engineers, my salespeople, and the executives when I would have workshops, I say, look, one of the reasons you have an instructor is because an instructor collapses time. Can you do it? Absolutely. But I took 5 months to study this, and I can tell it to you in a week. Mm-hmm. I would have some students that would pay $5,000 for a week class, and about Wednesday would say, oh, that paid for the class, what you just said in those 30 seconds. That's what a mentor does. They collapse time. Now, I probably worked on that problem for 3 weeks, and it took me a minute to give you the resolution. That's what you pay for. That's what you get from a mentor. So you don't have to take 3 months to figure something out. You can take a day. So does everybody have all the answers? Abso-freaking-lutely. But do you want to take 200 years?
No.
No. You want someone who's already been through this process that says, all right, let me share some of my experiences so that now you will know what you know and you'll know the things that I share. And so now you have the answers, but sometimes you need someone to help you discover those answers. So that's how I see that idea, that concept.
Vangelis, what is belief patterns?
There's a couple of ways of looking at that. Let's say you're okay. When I was, I think I was maybe 9 years old. My mom, she said, this was the wintertime. She said, don't go out in the cold. Don't go out outside. without a coat on, you'll catch a cold. So okay, all right. So there's my definition. If I go outside in the cold without a coat, now remember, I'm 9 years old, so I don't have all this, analytical and, experience of, 30 years. I'm only 9. So I made this belief. The belief is, if I go out there without a coat, I will catch a cold. Okay. It's summertime now and I catch a cold. What happened to my belief pattern? It was flawed. Wait, that means my mom doesn't know what she's talking about. Well, evidently, because she told me if it's the wintertime, she didn't, so you see what I mean? So you start building these definitions, these beliefs. And if I wouldn't have gotten a cold in that summertime, I would have had that belief my entire life. Mm-hmm. Okay? And so then, so that's one aspect of a belief pattern. Another aspect of a belief pattern is someone says to you, let's say, your dad said to you, Geni, whatever you do, you're going to be successful. And tells you that all the time. So you have a belief pattern. And so no matter what you do, Geni, it comes up roses. It's gold. And other people, how do you do that, Geni? You just, It's a belief I have.
I just do.
Well, that's the pattern you have in your life. No matter what you do. Have you done this before, Geni? I don't need to. Why not? Because everything I do turns out great. That's your belief? Yeah, it's a pattern I have. Whatever I do, it just, even if I don't even know what I'm doing. So that's a pattern. All right. So we had that one pattern where you define these beliefs, and maybe they're not even right. Maybe they are, whatever. And then you have these other beliefs that how you live your life. So all of those are belief patterns. Now there's also, we call them repeating patterns. Now, a repeating pattern is not necessarily an event. You may think it's an event, but it may not be an event. It's really an emotion that keeps coming up. Let's say someone says, my gosh, you get angry at everything. Okay, so that is a repeating pattern. It's an emotion that repeats. But the events are different. You were angry at the mall the other day. You were angry driving. You were angry at work. You were angry at school. Okay, so that's not a repeating event. It's the repeating emotion. Anger, 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 anger. You see? So that's 3 different types of repeating patterns. The emotion, the actual event, or belief. So that's how I look at those.
So you've been in this process for about 15 years.
Well, the first 50 years of my life, I wasn't living me at all. And when I told you I was in that hotel room and I made a huge change, that was 15 years ago. Yeah, 2009. Okay. So I've been in the process of removing, like Michelangelo, removing everything that's not me. Click, 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 click. And the first couple of years, in the first couple of years after I left everything, I left the church, I left all these people, I even left town, all these things, right? I blamed everybody.
Of course.
After 2 years, I started thinking, oh, maybe I had something to do with it. Now, the reason that took me so long, Geni, was because I grew up in an environment where an external entity did everything. Okay? The external entity did everything. You took no credit unless something went wrong. That's what never made sense to me. If things go wonderful, oh, that's that external entity. But if things go wrong, well, you did that. Well, okay. That seems a little like a dictator to me, right? So you could never take responsibility. So you never had that idea that you had anything to do with your life. Nothing. So if you don't think that you have anything to do with your life, how can you change it?
Can't.
If it's all up to this external entity, right? So I had this upbringing where everything was there. I did nothing. I had no responsibility. So you quickly realize that to be able to change that, you had to totally flip it. So that's why it took me almost 2 years to realize, well, maybe I did have some responsibility, because I was told you don't have any. Nothing. It's the external entity, right? And so because I left all of that, now I started thinking, maybe I have some responsibility. So I started reading books. And then after a couple of years, I started realizing, okay, I do have responsibility for this. So how do I take responsibility for my life? And then I went to that seminar in 2014, and that's when I realized, okay, there are things that I can do. There's a subconscious, there's my conscious mind, and there's belief patterns. I mean, I was never taught any of that stuff. None of it.
Why are we not teaching that at school?
I had several people in my life that did things for their benefit, not for mine. And when you hold back information, it's for the purpose of controlling you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you start realizing, my sister, she was a school teacher for 30 years. She retired, and then they called her back. So she's still teaching, but on her own type stuff now. And she would tell me they keep taking things out of the school. And she's like, well, but this is stuff that they need to know. Why remove things that people really could use to be able to live their life and think for themselves? Dead Poet Society. Mr. Keaton, he's talking to Mr. Nolan, one of the deans. And he says, I've been hearing, Mr. Keaton, that you've been using some unorthodox methods. He says, oh, well, I thought the whole reason and purpose for education was for people to think for themselves. What did Mr. Nolan answer? Not on your life. And when I saw that movie, I thought, yeah.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. It's supposed to be for you to think for yourself, but the answer is, we don't want you to think for yourself. We don't.
And there's...
Same thing happened at church. We don't want you thinking for yourself. Now, some people might say, but I had a great experience. Great, then you should be happy as anything. You should be feeling wonderful, and you should have this glorious, beautiful, I wake up every morning so wonderful, right? But you see, that's the deal. I know when people are not saying what's really in their heart. I acted all those years. Wonderful. So I know, when people go, well, I had, okay. Don't complain to me for an hour and then go, oh, but I wouldn't change a thing. I cannot tell you, for 30 years, I was traveling the world, deployments, teaching, workshops. I mean, I have 5 million American airline miles. Traveled the world. 30 years, 46 weeks out of the year I was traveling. And so many people would say, they would talk to me about their families, and they talk about all this stuff. They'd be complaining for like an hour, right? And they go, but I wouldn't change a thing. And I say, you can't say that after complaining for an hour.
What's the saying? You're saying doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different result is definition of insanity.
Yeah, and you see, this is where again, are you living your life? So the reason that you have the complaint is because what's inside me doesn't match what's out. This is not matching what I want. It's not. But you're trapped. Where do you go? Who do you talk to when you say, I'm just not happy? Well, you should be, again, you should be grateful and appreciative. Yeah, and so don't be honest with us and tell you don't like your life. Just act it like I do. And that's where it is. Act it like and people catch themselves. Oh, well, yes, it's okay. See, that's why you want to have someone to work with. That's why I welcome you to call me and talk, because I know how it is to live 50 years living someone else's life. Act acting like everything is great.
Isn't
I can
everything
see it.
great? Right?
Right through it.
Isn't everything
Pardon?
great? I'm just being funny. Everything is great.
Oh. Yes, everything is great. That's right. Well, it's the thing where when you say, "Hey, Jenny, how you doing?" "I'm fine." Have you ever tried saying, "Not doing so great"? And they'd say, "Oh, that's good." Because they're not listening to you. I would do that at IBM sometimes. They'd say, "How you doing?" I'd say, "Terrible." "That's good." I'm thinking, didn't even hear me, didn't even listen. That's what I mean. It's so funny. That's why I'm saying the first step is to be honest. That's the first thing you want to do is be honest. Are you living your life? Be honest. No, I'm not. My sister, her husband, when I was telling him a lot of the stuff I'm saying, here he goes, "Oh my gosh, that's me." He says, I wanted to be an artist. And, my parents said, just work for the family business and you can go to school later. 30 years later, now he's working in a floral shop, designing for big company events, and he is just loving it. So you see what I mean? It's like, it's not the activity. It's what's the motive behind it. I would be working till 2:00 in the morning thinking, God, I wish I was enjoying what I was doing. Now I'm working 2:00 in the mornings thinking, I really like what I'm doing. So it's not the activity. It's not how late you work. It's, are you building your dreams or someone else's? You see what I mean? All these perspectives that we've talked about, Geni, people use so much phraseology, but it's in a different context, right? Well, you have to change what you're doing. Not necessarily. What do you mean? Well, if you are not doing what you want to do, meaning maybe you're working here, but it's not yours, and now you're doing the same activity, but it's yours. Two guys have red roses, and they're bringing them home to their spouses. Right? One guy's thinking, "Oh my gosh, if I forget this, boy, it's going to be bad." The other one is thinking, "Man, I really enjoy her. I'm bringing this to her because I really want to express my thanks." Same activity. Same activity. Different motives. You see what I mean? That's what I mean by the same activity. I was helping people for the first 50 years of my life because of obligation. You got to help others. Now I'm doing it because I want to. Do you see what I mean? Same activity, but a genuine, sincere reason. Yeah.
Vangelis, do you have your routine that you do on a daily basis?
Yes, I do. In some of my studies, Harvard Business Review, years ago, probably 15, whatever years ago, they did studies that they said, what separates executives from the non-executives? And they found that it was not education, it was not culture, it was not their status, it was their intuition. So I took several courses on intuition, clairvoyance, claircognizant, clairsentient, and clairaudient. Remote viewing, all different things, grounding and all this stuff that did. And so what I did was I took all that stuff, it was about 2 years of stuff. I took all of that and I put it into a 20-minute, it's a video with animation, and I did it on a PowerPoint, and it goes through clearing energy that is not yours, activating and cleaning your chakras, grounding yourself to the center of the earth, going into the center of your head, doing your intentions, clearing any stuck energy in you. So it's like a whole process that I go through. And it's a video so that I'm watching it and I'm listening to it and I'm present with it, rather than listening to something and cleaning something, because you've got to be present. And so I do that. And then also someone put me in contact with this gentleman in India that helps you to find out and discover your soul's mantras. Everyone has a different purpose and reason. Everyone's a different expression of, God, spirit, universe. And so to find my soul's purpose now, I have these 6 mantras that I say every morning. And that's what I infuse myself with. And then I also have several other recordings that I do that it's a combination of stuff I've learned from Andrew Capp, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Maureen St. Germain. I mean, all these different people that I've listened to and read their books. Different types of affirmations, but it's affirmations that I have cleared my non-beliefs about. Because, an affirmation is anything you declare. You ever hear people say, oh, they're brain dead? That's an affirmation. They say it 10 times a day. And they say it, so it's an affirmation. So I do a lot of these affirmations that are wisdom and truths for me. So, and you see, when I was traveling for those 30 years, I spent 0 time on me, Geni. 0. I spent all my time studying, deploying, installing, and teaching and traveling. Now, I spend the first hour of every morning listening to what I just said, stretching my body physically, and then during the day, I take breaks and I feed myself with that stuff as well. So, and again, this is not stuff that okay, I'll do it tomorrow. No, I mean, this took me several years because, again, I was in the routine of doing nothing for me, Geni. I mean, that just beginning to think about me took years. You see what I mean? I mean, so that's why it's a gradual thing. And so that's what I would recommend. Getting honest with yourself. The first thing I would do is I would get someone to be a partner, help me, get a coach, get a mentor. Because again, could you do it by yourself? Yes. But as I said, the purpose of a mentor is to collapse that time. And when you read a book, that's good. But again, the book will tell you things to do, but am I going to be honest with myself? This is more than just accountability. I was in one group where they said, okay, so how can I help you? I said, excuse me? Well, how can I help you? I thought you were serious. You almost had me there. They're like, well, what do you mean? No, let me explain to you. See, I was a consultant for IBM and for Cisco. If I walked into a company and I'd say, how may I help? No, I got questions for you because I know how to help you. In fact, I can answer questions that you don't even know to ask. That is a mentor. So when someone goes, how may I help you? I go, okay, thanks, bye. This isn't for me. I want you to help me because see, if I have to tell you how to help me, then you need to pay me. You see what I mean? And you might think this is a little firm, but I'm telling you, this is years, decades of being on the other side. So I know how that stuff works. So now I'm on this side realizing, 45 years in the technology world, I learned a lot about how to work with people and how to share what I know with people. All right. And then 15 years and now and all of this stuff, I know what really, really helps a lot of people because I've seen it help me. Now, am I for everybody? No. But here's how I look at it. It would take me, okay, think about it, 1,200 people, 20 people a week, 20 people a week times, 10, 200 times 5 is 200, 1,000. So that's 1,000 people, 20 people a week, 1,000 people in a year. That's a lot of people. So people go, oh, I want to have a following of 1 million people. You can't even handle 1,200 people in a year. at 20 people a week. You see what I mean? So I'm not here for the whole world. I'm here for the people that are very similar to me. They don't need someone to tell them what to do. They don't need someone to be accountable and say, please put this on the calendar. I had no problem doing stuff. So I don't need that. So for those of you that you are at the end of your rope like I was, and you want to change your life, and you want someone that's going to guide you, not tell you what to do, that's going to work great for me. And it's going to work great for you.
Vangelis, can you share one of your
that's what
mantras?
Yeah, well, okay, now these are for me. These are for me, okay? So one of them is life is limitless. Action is creating a peaceful life. Wisdom is not allowing anything to upset me. So those are, again, those are the things that it took probably several weeks to actually go into my, so because like for one thing, the process works like the guy would say, when you think about life, what do you think? And I would think, well, I just want to be free. And so we would do this testing on that vibration for my soul, and it really was low. I mean, just not something that, it was a burden to me. He says, no, that's not your mantra. And so after going and doing these little practice exercises, I found out that life is limitless, no limits, right? Wisdom is being carefree, not worrying about what anyone else is thinking, all that kind of stuff. So all of that stuff, wisdom, don't worry about anyone, what they're doing, because I always was concerned. I wanted to be accepted. So you take all of that stuff and you put it into wisdom is being carefree. So that's my mantra for wisdom. Action is creating a peaceful life. Communication is peace and having fun. There was no peace and fun when I was growing up. I mean, so you see, those mantras were made for my soul. Yeah. And everyone else has their own. And we can figure those out. But it's just, so I say those. Yeah. Those really.
So what's next for you?
Visibility. That's really what's next for me. Because, see, I appreciate being on this podcast, Geni, because it's like, if nobody knows about you, it's interesting because I'll say Dr. Joe Dispenza and someone will go,
I know who Dr. Joe Dispenza.
No. But I mean, a lot of people don't. And you would think everybody knows Tony Robbins too. And you go, Tony Robbins, is that some, I'm thinking, okay. But that's what I mean. It's visibility for people to know that I even exist and going, okay, I wish there was some guy that knew what it was like to be, wealthy and have a great job and just feel empty. That's me. You see, so that's the next thing for me is doing these podcasts, getting visibility. So that's really the next thing.
Anything else you want to add for people who listen to this podcast?
I think you did really well asking me good questions. I think we covered a lot of stuff. I think we're good. And
in the closing, I want to say that you have to be honest with yourself and be aware of when you're not, and kind of start uncovering one layer after another and get help. How does people can connect with you?
Exactly. I have an email and I have a website. My email is MYH Academy. It stands for Mind Your Health Academy. MYH Academy @gmail.com. And I have a website, mindyourhealthacademy.com. And the name has a double meaning. Mind, which is your health, and then mind your health. Pay attention to your health. So that's what that name means. And also, just in case, I was knighted about 3 years ago into the Knights of St. John. So I'm also an ordained reverend. And I did that for a couple of reasons, because I wanted to be able to have people to feel free that we could work together, and you're under a very safe environment, because being part of the knighthood and part of this particular ordination, it allows me to be able to help people no matter where you are in the world. I'm part of the Blue Cross, which means if there's, even in peacetime or disaster, I can go anywhere. I have a diplomatic passport. So, I wanted to be able to have freedom to be able to go anywhere and help anyone.
All right, well, excellent. Thanks for your time and your wisdom and experience. And we'll have your links in the show notes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Geni. Goodbye.
My biggest takeaways from this conversation are: we innately have all the answers inside. Our childhood trauma and societal conditioning can lead to feeling empty and unfulfilled in our career and life. I see how essential it is to allow oneself to feel and process emotions while living authentically. Please do not forget, share, like, subscribe, and comment. It means so much to me and for the growth of this channel. Until next time, see you.